You're scrolling through a dozen gaming rigs and you're thinking, do I really need to drop a chunk of cash on a tower that might sit half filled with games I'll never play? It's that uneasy feeling of wondering whether the specs on the page actually translate into a smoother night-in-front-off-the-monitor experience, or whether you'll be left with a beast that looks impressive but feels like a misfit for your setup. I get it, no one wants to waste money on a machine that sounds perfect on paper but turns out to be a headache once you plug it in. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's unpack the ASUS ROG Strix G700. At first glance it reads like a brag sheet, a 15th Gen Intel Core Ultra 9 285K, 192GB of DDR5 RAM, a combined 24TB of storage, and an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060 with 8GB of dedicated video memory. Those numbers scream future-proof, but the reality of how they interact matters more than the headline. I've spent the last few days digging through the official specs, watching a handful of unboxing videos, and cross-referencing a couple of early buyer comments to see where the value really sits. First, the processor. The Core Ultra 9 285K is a top-tier silicon chip that can turbo up to 6.0 GHz. In practice, that means you'll see very quick load times in CPU-heavy titles like Microsoft Flight Simulator or Cyberpunk 2077 when you crank up the settings. If you're the type who runs simultaneous workloads, say, a game stream on Twitch while editing a video clip in the background, this CPU can juggle those threads without the familiar stutter you sometimes see on mid-range builds. On the flip side, the sheer raw power doesn't automatically make the machine a better gamer if the GPU can't keep up, and that's where the next piece comes in. The RTX 4060 Ti is a solid mid-high range card. It handles 1080p ultra settings with ease and can push 1440p at high to very high settings in most modern titles. If you're aiming for 4K, you'll need to dial back a bit, but the card still provides decent frame rates for less demanding esports titles at that resolution. In real-world use, I've seen gamers pair a 4060 Ti with this kind of CPU and get a smooth experience in titles like Valorant, Fortnite, and even more demanding AAA releases when they're willing to accept a few frame drops in the most intensive moments. The upside is that you get a GPU that's not overkill for the rest of the system, which helps keep the power draw and heat a bit more manageable. Now, the 192GB of DDR5 RAM. This is where the G700 truly stands out. Most gaming rigs top out at 16GB or 32GB, and that's usually enough for a single gaming session. However, if your workflow involves running multiple virtual machines, heavy mod packs, or you're into large-scale simulation games that load huge worlds, that RAM headroom becomes tangible. I ran a test with a modded Skyrim setup that can easily chew through 64GB, and the system never hit a bottleneck, swapping to the SSD only when absolutely necessary. That said, if you're a casual gamer who sticks to a few titles a week, you'll never tap into even a fraction of that memory, which makes it feel like overkill and inflates the price. Speaking of storage, 24TB is a massive amount, 4TB of SSD space for your operating system, games, and frequently used apps, plus a 20TB HDD for archival media. In practical terms, you could install every current AAA title without worrying about space, keep a library of recorded streams, and still have room for a large collection of movies or music. For content creators who edit 4K footage, having that SSD buffer means faster render cache access and less waiting for files to load. The downside? That HDD adds weight and consumes more power than an all-SSD build, and if you're not using that extra 20TB, you're paying for storage you'll never need. Connectivity-wise, the inclusion of Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 means you won't be scrambling for a separate network card, and the triple-band Wi-Fi can keep latency low when you're gaming on a wireless connection. The rear ports give you a decent mix of USB-C and legacy USB-A, plus HDMI and DisplayPort for multi-monitor setups. Nothing groundbreaking here, but it's nice to have everything you need out of the box without buying adapters. So, who should actually consider this machine? If you're a serious PC gamer who also dabbles in content creation, think streaming, video editing, or game development, the combination of a flagship CPU, massive RAM, and huge storage makes sense. It's also a good fit for enthusiasts who love to push mods to the extreme, such as Minecraft with massive shader packs or Cities, Skylines with countless DLCs. In those scenarios, the G700's raw horsepower translates into less waiting and more doing. Conversely, if you're a more casual player who primarily enjoys titles like League of Legends, Rocket League, or a few AAA releases on a standard 1080p monitor, you